As we stand at the threshold of the release of perhaps the most monumental vaccine in the history of our species, people have a lot of questions. How will these new vaccines work? What is mRNA? What even is a vaccine? Chapter 1. Life. The body is made up of organs, which are made up of tissues, which are made up of cells, the fundamental unit of life. One of the key building blocks of cells are proteins. They provide structure and function to facilitate almost all biological activity. The instructions for making proteins are encoded in DNA, the blueprints of life. DNA is compartmentalized in the nucleus of a cell. In order for the DNA's instructions to leave the nucleus, DNA is transcribed into a molecule known as messenger RNA, or mRNA. mRNA can leave the nucleus, where it is translated into proteins. This process, from DNA to mRNA to protein, creates proteins as diverse as those that encode for eye color, to the receptor that determines whether we love or hate cilantro. It is this very process, from mRNA to protein, that is hijacked by the novel coronavirus SARS-CoV-2 to make us sick. But it also drives the vaccine that will fight it. Chapter 2. Virus. Unlike cells, viruses aren't categorized as alive because they can't independently replicate and do not have a metabolism. They're just genetic material surrounded by a protein shell. The SARS-CoV-2 virus is a strand of RNA surrounded by 4 structural proteins: the spike, or S protein, the membrane, or M protein, the envelope, or E protein, and the nucleocapsid, or N protein. The RNA strand holds the instructions for those structural proteins and other proteins necessary to combine them. This protein shell is key to the virus's ability to replicate, and has been fine-tuned by evolution to target living cells, transforming them into virus-making factories. When a person breathes in SARS-CoV-2, the virus is exposed to cells lining the airways. These cells display a protein known as ACE2 on their surface. The viral spike protein binds to the ACE2 protein like a key in a lock. Once the virus binds to a cell, it injects its RNA. There, the RNA is translated into viral proteins, which are assembled into new viruses. Soon the cell is overwhelmed by virus particles. It is forced to give up much of its former function. It releases more and more viruses to infect neighbor cells and spread the infection further. But the body is not left defenseless. Chapter 3. Defense. The body's defense system, the immune system, has 2 branches that join in the fight at different times. This includes the first responders of the innate immune system and the seasoned fighters of the adaptive immune system. Innate cells, like macrophages, recognize virus particles and sound the alarm. Innate natural killer cells recognize infected cells and induce programmed cell death to prevent further spread of the virus. But it is the adaptive immune system that brings in the heavy artillery, after the primary response of the innate immune system. Special cells called antigen-presenting cells ingest virus particles, break them down into their component parts, then display the pieces on their surface. Immune cells, known as T and B cells, which can bind to different viral fragments, proliferate into specialized fighters targeted to the viral invaders. Some B cells differentiate into plasma cells to create targeted ammunition known as antibodies. Antibodies bind to the same viral protein as its parent plasma cell. They act as flags, targeting the virus for accelerated destruction. But not all antibodies are made equally. An antibody against a spike protein will act as a much more effective flag than an antibody targeting a nucleocapsid protein that is hard to reach. Thus, making useful antibodies takes precious time an infected person may not have. But there is a way to make antibodies in advance, to stack the deck in the body's favor. Chapter 4: Vaccine. Vaccines are a powerful weapon in the fight against viruses. Vaccines help the body produce antibodies before an infection begins. There are 3 classes of vaccines that can accomplish this. Vaccine class number 1, whole pathogen vaccines. Whole pathogen vaccines introduce weakened forms of a pathogen, like a virus that cannot replicate, which can induce an immune response without getting a person sick. Vaccine class number 2, subunit vaccines. Subunit vaccines introduce pieces of a pathogen, called antigens, that can also stimulate an immune response without symptoms of illness. When the body encounters inactivated viruses or viral antigens, it will eventually produce antibodies against them, conferring protection against future infection. But these vaccines remain dependent on the amount of inactivated viral particles or antigens present in the vaccine. This may be insufficient to mount a powerful enough immune response to provide future protection. But a new class of vaccine is providing promising results. Vaccine class number 3, nucleic acid vaccines. Nucleic acid vaccines come in several forms, but the forthcoming COVID-19 vaccines use mRNA. This mRNA encodes for the spike protein component of the SARS-CoV-2 viral shell. The mRNA is packaged in a lipid or fat bubble for protection. These bubbles merge with cells in the body to deliver the mRNA cargo to be translated by the cell. The cell begins to manufacture spike proteins and display them on its surface. From here, they can safely trigger the production of targeted antibodies without making a person sick. However, the mRNA is short-lived, and thus production of spike proteins eventually stops. It takes 2 doses of the vaccine to mount an immune response strong enough to provide protection against COVID-19. But once it does, these vaccines are reported to be up to 95% effective at preventing infection, stopping the SARS-CoV-2 virus in its tracks. But we need people like you to get vaccinated for it to work. It is my hope that a deeper understanding of the amazing biological processes behind these novel vaccines will decrease some of the fear and stigma surrounding them. Please like and share if you agree.